If you grew up being blamed for everything that went wrong in your family, if you were always the problematic one, the difficult one, the one who caused confusion, I have a revelation that will completely change how you see your story. You were never the problem, never. You were chosen to carry the weight that nobody else wanted to face. For years, you believed there was something wrong with you. Your narcissistic parents managed to convince you of this with such mastery that you yourself began to see yourself as the cause of all family conflicts. But the truth is frighteningly different. You were strategically positioned as the family scapegoat. While you carried all the guilt, all the shame, all the anger that should have been processed by the entire family system, your narcissistic parents slept peacefully, free from any responsibility. And now that you're beginning to wake up, that you're questioning this narrative, that you're moving away from this destructive role, something devastating is happening in your family. Your narcissistic parents are entering total panic. What you're going to discover in the next few minutes will shock you. It will validate every pain you felt, every moment when you wondered if you were going crazy, every time you doubted your own reality. Because when the scapegoat disappears, the entire narcissistic family structure collapses, and they know it. Let me explain exactly how this cruel mechanism works. The scapegoat isn't born problematic. They are methodically constructed to be seen that way. It's a perverse psychological engineering that your narcissistic parents executed with surgical precision for years. Do you remember those moments when something went wrong in the family and automatically all eyes turned to you? Even when you weren't even present when the problem happened? That wasn't coincidence. It was programming. The narcissistic family needs someone to deposit all the emotional dirt they refuse to clean up. All the internal chaos, all the repressed anger, all the unprocessed shame, all of this needs a destination. And that destination was you. You were trained to accept blame without questioning, to apologize for things you didn't do, to carry the weight of emotions that weren't even yours. And the cruelest part of all, you were conditioned to think you deserved this treatment. Meanwhile, your siblings, especially the golden child, learned that you were the safe receptacle for all their frustrations. Your parents knew you would always be there to absorb the toxicity, like a human sponge for family dysfunction. You developed an abnormal tolerance for emotional abuse. You began to normalize behaviors that should have made you run. You accepted explanations that made no sense whatsoever. You swallowed excuses that were disguised insults. But here's what they never expected. You grew up. You began to question. You began to distance yourself. And now, for the first time in your life, you're no longer available to be the family's emotional garbage dump. And this leaves them absolutely desperate. By the way, tell me something quick. What city are you watching this from? I'm curious to know where the people are who have the courage to face these difficult truths. Because what happens when you disappear from this function is something that goes beyond what you imagine. The moment you stop functioning as a scapegoat, something catastrophic happens in the family dynamic. It's like you pulled the wrong thread from a sweater. Everything begins to unravel quickly. Your narcissistic parents enter total panic mode. They literally don't know where to deposit all that toxic load they used to dump on you without any resistance. It's like the family's emotional landfill closed overnight. Imagine the scene. Your narcissistic mother wakes up in the morning with that familiar anger, that compulsive need to criticize, diminish, and attack. But when she comes your way with the usual poison, you don't react like before. You don't lower your head. You don't accept the blame. You don't beg for forgiveness. This leaves her completely disconcerted. It's like she lost the instruction manual for how to operate the family. The change in your behavior forces all other family members to face a reality they spent decades avoiding. The problem was never you. The problem was always them. When you develop what I call "I don't care" muscles, when you strengthen your internal emotional boundaries, you become impermeable to the attacks that used to destroy you. And this impermeability is terrifying for narcissistic parents. They realize they've lost control over your emotions, that they can no longer manipulate you with guilt, that they can no longer make you dance to their music. And this leaves them desperate. It's like you stepped out of the role in a theater they had been directing for decades. Now they have to improvise, and narcissists hate to improvise. They need control, they need predictability. They need you to continue being the problem so they don't have to look at their own problems. From the moment you refuse to be the repository of family dysfunction, the entire system enters collapse. The masks begin to fall. The lies begin to contradict each other. The carefully constructed narrative over the years begins to crumble. And this is where things get really ugly for them. When your narcissistic parents realize you're escaping the scapegoat role, they immediately activate what I call Operation Rescue. It's a predictable sequence of desperate behaviors that always follows the same pattern. First stage, the "why are you doing this?" phase. They'll confront you with false concern. "Honey, what's happening with you? Why are you being like this? What did we do?" It's the attempt to make you feel guilty for having changed, as if seeking your well-being was an act of family betrayal. They'll try to convince you that you're exaggerating, that you're seeing problems where none exist, that you're being dramatic. It's classic gaslighting, making you question your own perception of reality. Second stage, direct emotional blackmail. When the first stage fails, they move on to more direct attacks. "You need to stop this. You're destroying this family. Go back to being like you were before." Now the mask of concern falls, and they show their real face: desperation for control. They might use tears, they might invent health crises, they might mobilize other family members against you. Anything to force you back into the role they need you to play. Third stage, explicit threats. "If you continue like this, you're going to regret it. You won't be part of this family anymore. You're choosing to be our enemy." It's the last resort, pure and simple intimidation. They might threaten to cut you from the inheritance. They might promise they'll tell everyone you're a horrible person. They might swear they'll never speak to you again. It's emotional terrorism in its rawest form. What they didn't expect is that you'd reach a point where these threats no longer frighten you, where you realize that the family they're threatening to take away from you was never really a family. It was an emotional concentration camp. When you maintain your new posture through these three stages, when you don't bend under pressure, something even more desperate happens. Here, something happens that will leave you with a mixture of relief and horror. When your narcissistic parents finally accept that you won't return to the scapegoat role anymore, they immediately begin looking for a substitute. It's like a cruel game of emotional hot potato. All that anger, all that need to have someone to blame, all that toxicity that used to be dumped on you, all of this needs a new destination. And guess who the candidates are? First, they'll try to recruit the sibling who was always closest to you, who always defended you. It's a double revenge. They punish whoever had empathy for you and get a new target at the same time. Then, in one of the most shocking moves, they might even transform the former golden child into the new scapegoat. Yes, that sibling who was always the favorite, who never did anything wrong, can suddenly find themselves in the position you occupied for years. It's a brutal plot twist that shows how these family roles never had anything to do with who you really were. They were just functional positions in a toxic theatrical play. Imagine the shock of the golden child when they realized that all that love and approval was conditional, that they were only valued while you were there to be diminished. Without you as contrast, they lose their usefulness. Narcissistic parents might even try to expand the circle, trying to transform grandchildren, sons-in-law, daughters-in-law into new scapegoats. The need to have someone to attack is so compulsive that they're capable of sacrificing any relationship. But here's what happens frequently. Nobody else accepts this role with the same naturalness that you accepted. because you were trained from childhood to be the repository of family dysfunction. The others don't have this qualification. It's like trying to put an inexperienced actor in the leading role of a complex play. They don't know how to absorb abuse. They weren't conditioned to normalize the unacceptable. They rebel, question, distance themselves more quickly. And this leaves your narcissistic parents even more desperate, because now they realize they lost not just a scapegoat, but the best scapegoat they could have had. But the real battle is yet to come. When your narcissistic parents realize you won't come back and that nobody else accepts the role with the same submission, they enter what I call total war mode. This is where you see how far they're capable of going to drag you back. First comes the love bombing, that sudden shower of false affection you never received when you were a child. Honey, you were always our favorite. We always loved you more than everyone. It's pathetic to see how they think you'll fall for this after years of abuse. When false love doesn't work, they move to the heavy artillery of guilt. Your mother can't sleep because of you. Your father is depressed. You're killing your parents. It's the dirtiest manipulation there is, using their own health as an emotional weapon against you. They'll also mobilize the flying monkeys, those relatives, family friends, and even siblings who will call you pretending concern. Listen, I didn't want to interfere, but your mother is suffering so much. Don't you think you're exaggerating? The strategy here is clear. Isolate you socially, make you feel like the whole world is against you, that you really are the monster they always said you were. They might even appeal to expensive gifts, invitations to trips, promises of change. If you come back, everything will be different. We've changed. We understand now. They're the same empty words a domestic abuser uses to bring the victim back. But the cruelest weapon of all is when they pretend to be dying. Suddenly, your mother has a mysterious heart attack. Your father discovers cancer that nobody else in the family knows details about. It's emotional blackmail in its vilest form. They know you have a good heart, that you were raised to feel responsible for everyone's emotional well-being. They bet that your compassion will be your weakness. What they didn't expect is that you learned the difference between compassion and self-betrayal, that you realized that taking care of them means destroying yourself, that you understood that the price of family peace was always your sanity. When all these tactics fail, when they realize you really won't come back, something even more revealing happens. Now comes one of the most revealing phases of this entire sick dynamic. When your narcissistic parents finally accept that you won't come back anymore, they begin a bizarre, emotional back and forth between two contradictory narratives. One day, you're the perfect daughter they lost. She was always my favorite. She was the only one who really understood me. I don't know what happened to her. It's sanctification. They create an idealized version of you that never existed, precisely to intensify the drama of your loss. The next day, you become the devil incarnate. I always knew there was something wrong with her. She was always problematic, ungrateful, evil. It was better that she left our lives. It's demonization. You become the villain of the family story. This back and forth isn't accidental. It's a cruel psychological strategy. They're trying to process the narcissistic wound of having lost control over you, but as genuine narcissists, they're incapable of taking any responsibility for what happened. In the sanctified version, you're perfect, but you were kidnapped by external influences. That boyfriend of hers who put these ideas in her head. She's doing therapy with bad people. In this narrative, they continue being victims of malevolent external forces. In the demonized version, you were always evil from birth. She was born bad, always caused trouble. In this narrative, they're victims of a naturally defective daughter. Do you see how in both versions they're never to blame? How they never need to look at their own behavior? It's narcissistic mastery in action. The most painful part is that they'll spread both versions to different people, depending on the audience. For those who feel sorry for them, you're the perfect daughter who got lost. For those who might judge them, you're the problematic daughter who thankfully left their lives. They transform your healing journey into a soap opera, where they're the suffering protagonists. Your courage to free yourself becomes entertainment for their social network. But while they spend all this energy creating narratives about you, something devastating is happening to other family members. One of the most shocking consequences of your departure is what happens to the former golden child of the family. For years, he got used to shining at your expense. His entire identity was built in contrast to your inadequacy. He was the successful one because you were the failure. He was the responsible one because you were the problematic one. He was the beloved one because you were the rejected one. All his self-esteem depended on this constant comparison. Now that you're no longer there to be the negative contrast, he finds himself in an extremely vulnerable position. It's like they pulled the ground out from under his feet. Suddenly, the parents begin to notice flaws in him that previously went unnoticed. That tendency toward arrogance that was confidence now becomes arrogance. That financial dependence that was shared family responsibility now becomes lack of initiative. The cruelest part is that he doesn't have the emotional tools to deal with criticism because he never needed to develop them. You, as the scapegoat, were forged in the fire of adversity. You learned to survive in hostile territory. He grew up in a protected garden. When the first criticisms arrive, when he tastes the bitter flavor of being questioned, blamed, or diminished, he crumbles in a way that's almost painful to watch. He simply doesn't have emotional resistance. Often, he'll try to contact you desperately. What did you do? They've completely changed with me. How did you deal with this? It's ironic to see someone who always had everything served on a silver platter asking for advice from someone who was always treated like garbage. Some golden children try to rebel, but they don't know how. Others enter deep depression. Some even develop addictions or self-destructive behaviors because they can't process falling from the pedestal. The most tragic part is that many of them take decades to realize that the love they received was always conditional and manipulative, that they were used as much as you were, just in a different way. They were used as a weapon against you, as a tool to diminish you, as living proof that you were defective, and now that this function no longer exists, they discover they're as disposable as you always were. It's a brutal revelation that forces the entire family to confront an even deeper truth. Here, we reach the core of narcissistic terror, complete exposure. For years, you functioned as a perfect smokescreen for the family's real problems. While everyone looked at you as the problem, nobody paid attention to the true problems. Now, without you there to be the focus of all criticism, the spotlight naturally turns to where it should always have been, on the narcissistic parents. Suddenly, people begin asking uncomfortable questions. If the daughter was so problematic, why couldn't the parents help her? If she was so difficult, why didn't they seek family therapy? Why does a daughter simply disappear from her parents' lives? Your narcissistic parents find themselves in a position they spent decades avoiding, being questioned about their parental competence, and they simply don't know how to handle this because they never had to defend themselves. Your absence also reveals patterns that previously went unnoticed. Relatives begin to notice how the family dynamic changed, how certain conversations no longer flow, how certain conflicts no longer have the traditional scapegoat to be blamed. It's like when you remove the only broken piece of furniture from a perfectly arranged room. Suddenly, everyone notices the empty space and begins questioning why that furniture was broken in the first place. Your narcissistic parents feel like they're emotionally naked. All that dirt they projected onto you now has nowhere to go, so it keeps circulating between them, poisoning the environment in a way they can no longer hide. They lose the ability to say, the problem is so-and-so when something goes wrong. Now they need to find real explanations for their toxic behaviors, and narcissists are terribly bad at that. The feeling of vulnerability is so unbearable that many narcissistic parents begin to develop real physical symptoms. It's not pretending. It's the body reacting to the stress of having to face their own toxicity without an escape valve. They might develop insomnia, digestive problems, chronic anxiety. It's like the poison they always injected into you came back into their own system. But the most devastating loss is yet to come. The final and most terrifying realization for narcissistic parents is that you've become something they always feared, a free person who knows their truth. You're no longer controllable. You no longer accept their narratives. You're no longer afraid of the consequences of displeasing them. And this leaves them in total panic because now you represent a real danger to their carefully constructed image. You've become an uncontrollable witness. You know where all the family's emotional skeletons are buried. You witnessed all the abuse, all the lies, all the manipulations, and now you're no longer under their control. A narcissist's greatest fear is being exposed, and you, free and healed, represent the constant possibility of that exposure. Not that you're going to go around telling family secrets, but they don't know that. In their minds, you've become an emotional time bomb. They might even try to spread lies about you preventively, trying to destroy your credibility before you have a chance to speak. It's the preemptive attack strategy. They prefer to defame you rather than risk being exposed. But here's the most powerful truth of all. Your freedom is living proof that it's possible to escape. Every day you live happily away from their toxicity is a slap in the face to the narrative that family is family and that you'll always need them. Your peace is revolutionary. Your sanity is subversive. Your happiness is an act of rebellion against everything they tried to make you believe about yourself. Dr. Gabor Mate always said that trauma isn't what happens to you, but what happens inside you. And now you understand that freeing yourself from the scapegoat role wasn't just leaving a family function, it was recovering your soul. You realized you can't heal people who refuse to acknowledge they're sick, that you can't love people who use your love as a weapon against you, that you can't save a family that chose you as a sacrifice. And this is the cruelest and most liberating truth of all. Sometimes saving your life means letting other people drown in their own toxicity. If you made it this far, you already know what the next step is. Stop waiting for them to change. Start living for yourself.